Hey there, welcome to today's video, where I'll be sharing an amazing opening move for black to counter white's first move, pawn to e4. You can respond with pawn to d5, which looks like a Scandinavian defense, but the trick comes in the next moves, which is the main line here. Instead of taking the pawn, which is what black players usually do, you go bishop to g4, known as the Portuguese variation. Yes, it arises from the Scandinavian defense, but in fact, it's a standalone line. I've played this line a lot, especially in blitz, with great success because black's moves are easy and aggressive, making it unclear for white how to respond. Typically, they either play pawn to f3 to attack your bishop or bishop to e2. Now let's start with pawn to f3, which is the most aggressive response for white. After that, I'll show you how to react if white goes bishop to e2. So, white starts with pawn to f3, the most ambitious move, attacking your bishop and forcing it back. White then wants to maintain the central pawn on d5, so they play pawn to c4 to protect it. You respond with pawn to e6, offering an exchange. Here comes another trick. After they capture the pawn, instead of recapturing, you continue in gambit style with knight to c6. This move is aimed at rapid development and initiating an attack on white. Notice that black already has 3 minor pieces in play, with black's bishop ready to join the action, while all of white's pieces are still on their initial squares. This setup shows that black has an early chance to start an attack, which show great success for black. In most cases, black dominates, even with players like Magnus Carlsen using this line. Let's continue and see what you should do next. White will likely capture on f7, thinking it's advantageous, as it maintains material and exposes your king. However, this actually benefits black, as the king on f7 allows the rook to move to e8 and join the attack. Now, let's examine what white might play next, typically something to defend the pawn on d4. Because right now it's being attacked by your knight and queen, white will either push the pawn forward or play bishop to e3, protect that pawn. In this case, your next moves are really easy and natural, super easy to remember because you just develop. You go bishop to b4 check, which covers the king, then rook to e8. Just like we discussed before, we can see that white's earlier decision to trade pawns on f7 only helped black. Now your rook is very active along the e-file, attacking and pinning the bishop. White must move the king, as a move like queen to d2 to protect the bishop would not help at all because black can respond with the move queen takes d4. The bishop is pinned, and here black is winning. They have too many threats for white to handle. Let's say they trade queens. Now the bishop is under attack, and you're threatening knight to c2, attacking everything in white's position, ensuring a winning advantage. We saw that queen to d2 doesn't really help, so white has to play king to f2, not only to protect the bishop but also to eliminate the pin along the e-file. However, you have a forced victory here that is not easy to find if you're unfamiliar with this line, which is why white players often fall into this trap. It starts with rook takes e3, inviting white's king forward, but even then, it's unclear how to proceed and finalize your attack. The next move is bishop to c2, a brilliant move that tries to deflect white's queen from protecting the d4 pawn. If white captures the bishop, you play queen takes d4 check, and after king to e2. Your final piece joins the attack with rook to e8 check. As you can see, white's king will be checkmated very soon. Let's go back a few moves. We know this line is losing for white. It was after black played bishop to c2. Capturing the bishop is not an option for white, as black can take the d4 pawn. But what if white goes queen to d2? What's the point of the bishop to c2 move? It may seem like it doesn't change anything, but it does, as black has another powerful move with knight to g4 check, sacrificing the knight seemingly for nothing. After white captures, you play queen to g5, which not only attacks the king but also threatens the queen, white's two most valuable pieces. After something like king to e2, you go rook to e8 check, forcing the king to move, and then you capture the queen, finalizing the attack. Let's go back to one of the main positions of this variation. We've analyzed white playing bishop to e3 to protect the pawn on d4. However, the most popular move by white is pushing the pawn forward, which initially looks good, as it attacks your knight and seems aggressive. But in fact, it's completely wrong, as it only helps you advance and create threats. Now your knight is aiming to go to c2 with a double attack on white's king and rook, which forces white's knight to an awkward position on a3. Completely out of the game, just to protect the c2 square. After that, you go bishop to c5, taking advantage of the weakness created by white pushing the pawn forward. Now you've got a powerful bishop on c5, controlling key weaknesses in white's position, preventing white from castling in the future, and playing a crucial role in your attack. White would probably play something like bishop to e2, and you go rook to e8. Just look at this position, how dominant black is. All of black's pieces are active, while white's pieces are stuck with almost no mobility. The knights can hardly move, the bishop is pinned, white can't castle, and white's position is completely paralyzed. It's going to be super easy for you to finish your attack here. In case white plays something like bishop to g5, I'd like to ask you to think about how you would proceed here as black. Let me know in the comments down below what move you'd choose in this position. Now, let's move on to the Portuguese gambit once again. You can play this gambit if white opens with pawn to e4, you respond with pawn to d5. After that, knight to f6. The main move is pawn to d4, and here we go with bishop to g4 to surprise your opponents. We analyzed the move pawn to f3 earlier, which many players choose. The second most common move, or perhaps the most popular, is bishop to e2, which poses no real threat to black. After that, you simply trade bishops and take the pawn on d5. Not only are you taking the pawn, but you're also attacking that weak pawn on g2. White will likely castle to protect the pawn, and you respond with knight to c6. Your position is strong here. Notice that you're already more active than white, which is a rare scenario for black. You're also ready to make a long castle to increase the pressure on white's weak pawn on d4, putting white in a bit of trouble. If white plays knight to c3 to attack your queen, you can simply move it to h5, adding further pressure to white's position. White may respond with knight to g3, and if they try something like bishop to e3, you can castle long. This setup is excellent because now you're ready to play e5, taking advantage of the pin. The queen on h5 can also support knight to g4 in some lines, threatening the h2 square. Let's step back a move. That's why, instead of bishop to e3, white often plays knight to g3, offering a queen exchange. Trading queens is perfectly fine, leading to an equal endgame with no problems. However, I'd recommend a more aggressive approach with queen to g6. Although both options are equal, queen to g6 places more pressure on white. If white plays bishop to e3, you can castle long and prepare to play e5 again, attacking the pawn and utilizing the pin. Your h-pawn is ready to advance, creating threats with h5 and h4 to attack white's knight and expand on the kingside. White must be extremely cautious to avoid serious trouble in the next few moves. While white's position is playable and approximately equal objectively, it's much easier for you to play as black. For example, if white plays knight to c2, a common move, you go pawn to e5 to pressure white's central pawn. If white defends it, you can play h5, threatening h4, followed by h3 to attack the knight. As you can see, white has to be very careful, or they risk getting checkmated in just a few moves. This makes the Portuguese gambit a powerful opening weapon for black. Thanks for watching.